Well, thank you for joining me on Mindset Mastery. I am so excited to have my guests with me today. We have Andy and Kiara who are here, and they are part of a duo that have a company called Relationship Road Trip, and I can't wait for them to tell us all about that. Before we start, I just want to say rest in peace, Prince. I don't know if you guys were aware of the news, but I just absolutely loved his music, and that's what I was jamming out to before we started the show tonight. So I think he would want us to celebrate. So thanks for joining us. Tell me a little bit about Relationship Road Trip before we dive right in. How did you guys come about doing this? It sounds so fascinating.
Do you want to take the lead, Kara?
Sure. I watched a podcast with Kate Bull, and Andy Gordon was being interviewed there. And it's like the first interview of hers. I know her personally, so I'm really excited about her stuff. But it was the first interview I ever watched the whole thing of. And I checked him out on Facebook, and I was like, I saw a video of him talking about masculine energy. And all I ever want to talk about is feminine energy. So I contacted Andy, and I think a couple of days later we were on a call already chatting and kind of couldn't stop talking. So I think that day, actually even that day in that first hour or hour and a half, whatever we had, we decided that we needed to do some work together. And since then we've had, I think it's been minimum of an hour every time we've chatted, up to like 3 hours. We just can't stop talking about relationships and all of the things we've learned, and we wanted to share them with other people.
Oh, I love that. Did you have the same feeling when you talked to Kiara for the first time, Andy?
I'm watching you, Andy.
No pressure, right? It was quite funny. Like I did that interview, and then she messaged me, and I think when we talked about it, Kara said, I'd love to connect, and I just saw your interview, and I'm big on feminine energy, and I'm so big on and this is probably feminine energy in itself, right? But the connection, and I love the video, like this is awesome. Like it's my first ever blab, right? So I love that people can live interact and so on. So I'm always big on connecting with someone, like in person or on the phone also, but if I can see you and talk to you, that's what I wanted. So I shot back, I was like, yeah, let's jump on Zoom when you're free. And I think Kiara's intention was just to let's just connect on Facebook and chat and talk and stuff. And she was kind of like, oh, all right, let's talk.
Okay, and let's talk properly.
As soon as we connected, there was, I don't know, I think this sets the grounds for what we talk about with extraordinary relationships, but there was no conversation about the superficial or like the ego stuff. It was just like, bam, dive in deep straight away. And I think when you have like a soul connection with someone like that, the fluff is gone, and like your higher selves are just connecting and talking to one another, and that's where it's been. And then now we have a heap of fun. Like we'll get onto a call on Zoom, and then here's our agenda, here's what we want to talk about, and like an hour and a half later we've covered the first point, and we're just talking tangents. And so it's really exciting. And I think the Relationship Road Trip name, we only even just settled on that. We were bouncing ideas around like, what do we want to call what we do? And when we first met, Kiara was like, I've always wanted to do like a relationship road trip, like go around just talking to people, interviewing them about, what's their version of relationships and so on. And then we were bouncing all these business names around, and there's so many other names that we brought up that people already had. And then I was just kind of went, why don't we just call it Relationship Road Trip? Because for me, that's what a relationship is. It is like a road trip, and it is that journey, and you're going towards a destination, but the whole thing is, it's so eventful. There's so many different turns and potholes and everything that goes on, and storms that close roads and everything like that. But at the end of the day, it just matters who you're doing it with, and the journey that you take and the experiences you get out of it. And I think it creates the potential for a lot of fun with that too.
Yeah, that's so great. I love that description. And you guys both said so much. I have so many questions already. The one thing that I want to touch on right away, and this is something that I've heard a lot, Facebook groups and with different coaches, and especially female coaches, they talk so much about, focusing on your feminine energy, and it's almost like they're trying to set up masculine energy as bad. And what do you feel? Like, do you think that there has to be a balance of both? I think I already know the answer. Go ahead and tell me what you guys think.
Oh my gosh, we both love this topic so much.
Oh, good.
Can I go first, Andy?
Yeah, sure.
So the way that I see that the world has kind of evolved at the moment is that we had a lot of masculine energy and the feminine energy was not appreciated, and there wasn't an equal view of feminine and masculine, or at least not an equal appreciation of the both. And so the feminine energy kind of got squashed down, and to be able to be seen as an equal to the masculine, women have often taken on the role of masculine. So to kind of compete in the business world and to be seen as equals, they're just like, they've taken on the masculine energy as a way of saying, I am enough. But actually the feminine energy, like, you know, we are all equal and all enough just as we are. And so we actually can do feminine energy better than men can, and men can do masculine energy better than we can. We all have a balance, but naturally we usually feel better and more ourselves in one of them. So usually for women that's feminine, and usually for men that's masculine, but it doesn't have to be that case. So it's kind of like the feminine energy got squashed down and undervalued and underappreciated. And so then we've got this paradigm where men are acting like, you know, in their masculine energy, and women are acting in their masculine energy. And so after that, the masculine energy in a man has kind of been squashed down. So can you imagine around the kitchen, around the time when like the both of the parents have come home from work and they need to do lunches for the next day and cook dinner and all that sort of stuff. And he's like, yeah, I can take charge. And she's like, I'm taking charge, you know, and they're both kind of competing. And it's not okay, you know, in general society these days for the man to be like, I've got this. You know, like that strong masculine, you can depend on me energy. So he kind of gets squashed down, and then he gets criticized for being like, they're like, why can't he just step up? And it's like, he can't step up because you're in his shoes, you know? So I think that when the strong, healthy masculine isn't allowed to be around at the moment, a lot of unhealthy masculine behaviors can come out, and we see that in men and women. But I think that that's how you get men who are trying to prove that they're really manly, and, you know, abusive relationships and things like that. I'm sure there's a lot else that comes into it, but that whole dynamic where women weren't allowed to kind of be seen as enough in their feminine energy, so they became masculine, and then the man had to step out of that because they were fighting for that same role, and he's not allowed to prove he's dominant, and then we're all just out of balance, really. Which I know that I definitely saw in some of my past relationships. Andy, do you have anything you want to add on that whole big story?
Yeah, I find this is actually really interesting and really funny, because Kiara and I don't really disagree on much, but there was some of the stuff that I agree with, but a lot of what Kiara said I actually disagree with. And that's cool. I didn't know this. So for me, the statement that men do masculine better and women do feminine better, I completely disagree with. I feel that we have I call like a home zone, or a dominant state of where we sit in our masculine or feminine. But the fact that men do masculine and female do feminine, I think that's a really warped concept, because it's not how it is. You know, I've got some male friends that are incredibly feminine and definitely dominant in that state. Like, that's where they reside. That's their natural state. And there are women that are exactly the same in regards to the alter ego of that. And I believe that everyone is that yin and yang, right? Everyone is here. Like, there is a perfect partner in what we do. And I see that the ideologies that Kiara talked about as well are really common, where men don't even understand what being masculine is. Like, if we just keep it to the generic, what Kiara was talking about, that men are masculine and females are feminine, men don't even know what true masculinity is anymore, because we're told that, you know, being a man is X, Y, and Z in the media, and this is what a man is, yet, and that you're acting out. And like, you ask someone what's someone who's super masculine, alpha male, and they do the chest beating and all the rest of it. And in fact, those qualities are quite feminine. You know, it's quite feminine to be showboating and expressing and experiencing and looking in the adoration kind of stuff. That's a very feminine quality in energy talks. So we've got men that are acting really in their feminine, and then we've got so much stuff of being like, you know, happy wife, happy life. And, you know, though just such a throwaway statement, but what that does is exactly what Kiara talked about, where it pretty much makes that masculine energy, you're telling it to pretty much go feminine and become that, you know, submissive kind of energy, where it's like, you know, submits and releases to you make the decisions and so on. Going, my happy wife, happy life, whatever she wants, I'll give it to her. And on a conscious state, that's great. We're like, whatever she needs, I'll give it to her and so on. But how many times have we seen in relationships where a guy is just give everything he can to that woman, and she's like just never satisfied. I just want them to step up. I just want him to step up and be the man. I want him to really, and once that masculine that Kara was talking about, that energy of going, you know what, like take charge. Just literally like the masculine coming home or like calling her and saying, baby, when you get home, there's a dress on the bed. We're going out to dinner. I'm going to treat you tonight. I'm going to talk, like taking control and saying what you're going to do. That feminine just wants that. And you look at Kiara's reaction. I look at both your faces and that reaction.
Yes, please.
Yeah, just a masculine stepping into it. And then the feminines too in our media, they're telling them like, independent woman, step up, and you don't need a man and all the rest of it, right? It's encouraging the feminine to become masculine and to take a step up, and that doesn't mean that a person can't be independent or strong-willed or whatever it is in work, in life, in their space, but it's where they reside naturally, and being able to understand that, hey, this is like my home zone. Like I really feel good in being in my feminine, but I have the capacity and the fluidity to just swing into masculine if I need to in work, or if I need to get the kids to do something, whatever it is, but using those energies, but knowing where your home zone is. And I could go into talking about polarity and stuff, but probably wait, it'll evolve to that anyway. But yeah, being able to identify where you are at, like where your home zone is, so to speak, and on the scale of energy and where you feel most natural is huge in creating relationships, understanding how to get back to there when things start to shift and get out of balance.
Yeah, that's really great. And I love how you guys both have a different view of it, and that there's, there's gems in each of, of what you both said. I know you have something to say, Kiara. I just want to mention one thing. I was talking to a woman who was very dominant in a very dominant field at work. She was in corporate law, and she was only working with men, and she had been for a number of years. And what she was finding is she found it really hard to relax and be intimate with her partner in a very feminine way. And she hadn't associated to. And, often what I do with my clients is I ask them, okay, tell me about your sex life. How is it now? How do you want it to be? Tell me about your business. How is it now? How do you want it to be? And often one or the other, if it's not working in your sex life, is not working in business, typically is what I see. Sometimes there's a complete contrast in the two. If you're very passionate about your business but not your sex life, then there tends to be a difference there. But how have you found in relationships, when you have a very, say a female, like in that example, a female who's had to be masculine at work because it's not accepted for her to be otherwise. And I know that we're trying to get the balance to shift in that way, but how do you encourage in relationships to be able to step out of that role when you come home and let the man be in his masculine home and the woman be intimate and, have that kind of affection on her? How do you find that can work?
I think the first step is awareness. So knowing what it feels like to be in each of the energies. And just in case anyone is thinking, I don't even know which one it is, I don't know which one I'm in. When I first found out about masculine and feminine energy, I sat on the bed and cried, and I said, what if I'm just more masculine? Because I do, like Andy said, I do believe that we do have both. And that we feel at home in one of them more than the other. So I sat there and just bawled my eyes out. And the male that was explaining that to me, he said, well, why don't you just play with them and find out? And so I kind of went on a journey of figuring out which one felt good at that time, and noticing which one I was in. And one of the ways that I think that you can do that is imagine that you've just jumped out of the car, someone else is driving, they're waiting in the car for you, you need to grab something from inside and run back out. And how you're like, yes, I'm determined, I'm going to get there, I've got like this purpose. That's like more of a masculine energy. And then if you imagine like holding a newborn baby and just being like staring at the baby and admiring it, that's more of a feminine energy. And I think you can tell a lot about which energy you're in based on how you walk. So you might want to play with that at home. You can have someone watch you and just reflect back to you what they're seeing when you're trying to be in both energies, obviously one at a time. So awareness is key. But I used to work from home, and my partner would come home and I was still kind of in work mode. So sometimes masculine, I'll admit, because I didn't get the whole balance sorted at that time. And so it's about having some kind of pattern interrupt. That might look like you have an agreement with your partner that as soon as he comes home, you stop everything you're doing, you put everything else aside, and you just come and connect with him in some way. So maybe you just hold your faces close to each other and like breathe in each other, and then like, you know, kiss and just say, how was your day, or whatever it is. You might not even go into a full conversation, but that minute allows you to just kind of breathe in each other, and that brings you back into the moment and hopefully back into your more dominant energy, the one that you feel better in. It could be that, you know, he's coming home, so you stop and you play a song and dance around sexy, and then he gets to come home and see you dancing around sexy, you know, those sorts of things. I think a pattern interrupt and understanding the difference between the two and recognizing them in your body are the most important things for that.
That's great. Great advice. What do you think, Andy?
Yeah, I think it's about reconnection. So awareness, definitely. You need to be, like I said, aware of where you're at, and being able to check in with yourself and tap in and be like, am I in that masculine state still coming from work? And using the example you spoke about in regards to like coming home to a partner, something that, you know, my partner and I did to connect is eye meditation. And that is just to sit down for, whether it's 5, 10, 20, half an hour, to sit there, not touching, really close to each other, and just look at each other's eyes, and then the answer to share whatever you saw, whatever came up, and so on. And it's amazing the different things that can happen. But what I find with that is that that's unfiltered connection. There's nothing background, there's no other thoughts and so on. It's just total stillness and rawness and being there and present with your partner. And for me, it resets that polarity. It resets the, cool, I go back to my state. Because when a connection or a spark occurs between two people, it's a polarity scale, right? There's a masculine, feminine match, whether it's man, man, woman, woman, man, woman, whatever it is, there's a polarity match, and that's where the spark occurs and the attraction occurs. And the stuff I was talking about before, the happy life and stuff, when that scale starts to tip out, if you look at North-South pole and they go like this and they're not aligned anymore, that's where you start to have friction and things like that, and they're not understanding me and all the rest of it. So when you can come and connect and just reset that polarity, forget about all the outside world and whatever, the kids, whatever's going on, and have that moment, that's where it resets, and that's where you can have that unfiltered connection. It builds incredible rapport and trust and love with you and your partner. But it resets that, and you understand where it all becomes from, and you get back to that core.
Yeah, that's really great advice, both of what you said. And I think that's really important for couples to really sit with and practice themselves, because it can be tough. And, you know, in roles now is not traditional. The man goes out and brings home the bacon and the woman cleans the house, because we don't have those, you know, the girl stays here and the boy goes there kind of thing. The roles can be, you know, we all have to pitch in and do what we need to do. Parents are often, one is going here and one's coming there. So there isn't the straight divide that there used to be. Not that it was necessarily good before, but just that there was that kind of obvious gender divide. So now to be able to reconnect and to feel okay getting into your feminine or masculine energy, whatever it is. Now, I also had a conversation with someone on the flip side where she was very comfortable and associated with her feminine energy. And what she was finding is she wasn't getting enough sex from her partner, who was really busy working through the day. He was very sexual, but just through the week, it was all about work. And she wanted to kind of get more of that through the week, but she didn't want to come across as the aggressor or to be initiating all the time, because she didn't want to be associated with the masculine energy. It was really a big stretch for her. What would you say in those cases when, you know, one or the other is resisting? Like perhaps it's even the male who is resisting the idea of being romantic and, you know, flowers and planning the date that you were talking about, Andy, because sometimes it's uncomfortable for a man who's very in his masculine to accept that he's going to do something like that. What do you think about those situations?
Yeah, I'm happy to take the head on that one. Once again, it comes down to open communication. Yeah. So, you know what, like I've found like I've had quite an explorative journey into like my sexual side and world and things like that. And And one of the things that fascinated me, I remember doing a research on like in uni, like the world of BDSM and talking about like kink and stuff like that. And what stood out to me was that in that world and in that, you know, those fantasies and fetishes and stuff like that, there is such massively open communication and honest. And it's like, here's what I like, here's what I don't like, here's what I'm willing to try, but we need to do this first. And then today we're going to do this. Like, such open, honest communication, no judgment, no nothing. And if traditional relationships or sexual relationships can bring that kind of communication into it, this stuff doesn't really occur, because it's just going like, here's how I'm feeling, here's what I want. Like, even that thing, right, doesn't want to be the aggressor, but can sit down and be like, I just want you to take me, like, come home and like literally just have your way with me, because you've been wanting to be with me all day. Even if you haven't had those thoughts, come home and make me feel like that. Like, just take me and have your way with me, and let me know that you're the masculine and you're the dominant, and let me be there, and let me be that submissive, that subservient in that state, right? But just communicating, that's not being the aggressor. That's just sharing, here's what I want. And if you can't communicate that, then it's like, okay, well, what's holding you back in that communication, and addressing that? But it's got to come from a state of open, honest communication to say, here's what I want. And yeah, he may be tired. Like, you know, there may be lots of stuff on, but having that just honest, open, here's the cards on the table. Here's how I feel. Here's what I really want. I'm going to look at ways I can give that to myself. You know, I'm going to look at ways I can increase my intimacy and those things for me. But from your side of things, I would really appreciate just once a week at this, or whatever, or what can we do? What can we do to get this? Because this is what I'd really love. And if you've got a partner that's playing full out with you and that's there with you, they'll openly communicate back. If they don't, then maybe look at what's going on and why.
That's great advice. What do you think, Kiara?
I totally agree. I think I think all of us have been told that we can't be selfish. And so we've kind of taken the words I want out of our vocabulary. And it's less vulnerable to say, can you please, or, you know, can you do this? Whereas if we say I want, it's coming from a place of true desire. And so a lot of us have stopped saying that. And I found that, actually, do you know, I was reading a book that said, I want, you know, we should start using that instead of telling our partner what to do, which a lot of women do these days, myself included. And so I said to my partner once, I was laying on the ground, and I said to him, can you lie down next to me? I just felt like I really wanted him to lay on the ground with me. And he said, no. And I said, I want you to lay on the ground next to me. And he dropped down instantly. You know, your partner wants to give you things that will make you happy. So if you can express it in a way that says, I want, rather than I feel like you don't give me enough sex, like, which one is he going to feel more empowered and more masculine and more sexy for?
Yeah, absolutely. It's a subtle switch of language, right? Because you're saying I want is suggesting that's from, like you said, the desire. But when you don't say I want, when you say can you do, or you haven't, or, you know, do this, it's assuming that he hasn't already pleased you or already taken the step to make you feel feminine or whatever it might be. Like, he was like, no, you're not going to tell me to lay down on the ground. But then when you said I want, because that's what he wants to do, is please you, that's what he was willing to do. Yeah, that's fascinating.
Totally. Can I add to that? I'm big on playing games, because I think, like, I'm a big kid at heart, and I think everyone, we have our inner child, and that's kind of, life's meant to be fun and want to get back to. So on grounds that things can be awkward or friction or whatever, there's a game that I play and that I've played with, we've done in couples, we did like a sober New Year's with some friends in Melbourne over New Year's, and this is one of the games we played, and it's amazing what comes out. It's called I Desire. So it would be Kiara and I, or you and I, standing face to face, and you just saying to me what you desire. So be like, I desire whatever. Like, Kiara, if you just want to throw something outside, go with it.
I desire water. Am I meant to do something more
you
sexual?
You can have that. No, but it starts there, right? So it's like, I desire water, and it's like, you can have that. And that person then says, thank you. And so I'll go, what do you desire? And then again, I desire whatever, you can have that. Thank you. And it's amazing what comes out. It'll be sexual, it'll be life, it'll be everything. But the first few that come out are kind of tweaked by your ego. And then it just starts to become unconscious, because you just like, it just comes out and you're like, I don't know what to say. And it's there. And if you and your partner can agree to play full out and just be open and honest, and not judge or not take anything personally, and just believe that's just a desire, it's amazing what can come out. And, you know, if you can be like, I desire chicken for dinner, and it's like, you know, from the say the feminine saying that, it's like you have that. It's like, I desire to be tied up in sex. Oh, you can have that. I desire to go to the water park. Like, you can have that. Like, yeah, it can be anything, but it really opens that communication up, and it's fun. And perhaps after that, and then you guys can explore those things more and talk about it if things have come up that haven't been talked about before.
That's a really fun game, actually. I'm going to be sure to pass that on to my clients, my Facebook group for sure, because I'm sure there's some in there that would want to try it. And it takes the pressure off, because it's not saying, oh, you didn't, sex wasn't good last night, can you do this? It's like a fun way to see what else. And you might even surprise yourself, I imagine, because some of the things that might come out might not be what you think. Yeah, that's great.
I remember doing it and then going, do I? It's like, must do.
Yeah, exactly.
Fair enough.
I think Kiara might be a little bit frozen there for a second. So when you were talking about when you met Kiara and it was about a soul connection, I deal with mind sex, which is the mindset and the sexual energy. And as I'm sure you know, she might have to step back in here. As I'm sure you know, our sexual energy is the most powerful energy we have inside of us, and it's equivalent to your creative energy. And what a lot of people I have found is that stories they carry with them around sex prevents them from really going to and tapping into their sexual energy. How do you find that in your practice in couples? Do you find like they each have a story that's nothing to do with each other, and it gets carried into their bedroom?
Totally. It's honestly one of the biggest issues with couples, because I truly believe, like, I know it does, sex matters. Like, sex is hugely important in a relationship. Yeah. Like, if it ain't good, the relationship ain't good. Like, I don't care what you say. So that needs to be a part of it. But people have so many old stories, and like, speaking from a man, like from the masculine side of things, well, guys grow up now with like just porn shoved in their faces from like a young age, right? And that's not sex. That's porn. It's like saying that the latest James Bond movie is how life is. It's not. It's acting. So they're looking at that, and then guys get this knowledge of like that. If you're looking at those things that are shoved in your face in the sex industry, like a 10 or 12-inch cock is normal, and that this is how you have sex, and all those kind of things, and it just completely warps what sex and intimacy and everything is about. And same with the feminine too. It's those kind of things too, of what they need to be and how they need to be and all that in sex. So guys have all these stories, and so do feminines, are sure, but I'm speaking from the man side here of, is their dick big enough? Do they last long enough in bed? All this sort of stuff. Even things like 2/3 of men don't last longer than whatever time frame, and that's not normal. And it's like, well, if you actually step out of the marketing of that, if 2/3 of men last that long in bed, then that's probably the normal. It's instead of trying to make them feel bad about it. So just lots of stuff like that, and they carry that. So I see so many guys that have, when they first start having sex, it's obviously over in that, because they're brand new as in their teens, and quite often the age. And then because there's so much marketing, all this stuff told about that's not normal and so on, they develop these social complexes and beliefs that is all I'm going to be able to do. And they repeat that. And, your sexual energy is so powerful, but your mind controls everything. And when you make a decision that you don't last long in bed, or that you can't fulfill a woman or whatever, you will create that external every time you have sex. And so they carry those beliefs and so on into relationships. And it's like a form of self-sabotage. Yeah. And I think it's something that Karen and I talk a lot about in regards to empowering individuals or couples to have extraordinary relationships. It's that you need to focus on you and remove the codependency. Focus on you and your things and what's holding you back, and grow you together. Because when you do that, the connection that you guys have is unrivaled. And I can't speak too much on the feminine side of things, but I can definitely come in there. But the sexual stories and stuff, like, like I've been with women that have been, abused when they were younger, like touched up by family or friends or whatever. I've been with women that their first time they were raped. That was they're losing their virginity, like things like that. And the way that has, when it's not dealt with and not processed in sexual intimacy and relationships, it's just a whole other dynamic. So there's so many things that we hang on to in our life, and this is way outside of relationships too, but specifically relationships, all these old experiences and so on we hang on to, as opposed to looking at them and being like, here's my past, here's all of the experiences I've had, and they make sense for why I'm here today and where I'm at today. All of those decisions, experiences, emotions, everything explain why I sit here and this is what I talk about. But for my future, none of that matters. That's just what explains today. I can turn around and create whatever future I want. And that's it, and if we can get that mindset and start to do that and start to openly communicate what we want and desire and that the other partner wants and how we can give that to each other, and not being like, I should already know that, but it's like, oh, I want to do this. I've never done that before. Can we try out? What can we do? Who can we speak to? If we take that mentality, man, sex is like incredible. Like I'm having the best sex of my life at the moment because I've got a relationship that talks about that kind of stuff, right? And it's so open. So yeah, I think people need, I keep going back to communication. But if we can let go of this stuff and deal with what we need to there and choose to create our own future, man, it's good.
Yeah, it's so true. And before you got bumped off, Kiara, I was just mentioning why I talk about mindset, because mindset and our sexual energy. And I found that many of the people I talk with, their sexual stories that they have even before they met their current partner often dictates how good or not good their sex life is. And, one of the things that I wanted to mention, Andy, that I think is so true in what you said, men, I find, have very little information. Men and women are given very little information in school and wherever they learn about sex. And there's this idea that men have to be these Don Juans and they know exactly what it needs to happen. And, women don't even know how their bodies work. There's no way that a man can know how their bodies work. And the other thing is how mental the game is for us, like how much goes for a woman, how much work and how much stuff we think about. And I'm sure it's the same for men, but how much we think about before we even make it to the sheets. There's so much that goes on there that can really get in the way. So Kiara, for you, from the feminine perspective, how do you find, and Andy covered that well in relationships, how our stories can be brought into it, but do you feel the same way that our sex stories can really kind of help or hinder our relationships?
I think it's not even just our sex stories. It can be so much about all of our stories, you know. If we have a belief that we can't ask for what we want, which happens a lot, especially with women, I think, we don't know how to ask for what we want in bed. If we have a belief that we're not sexy, that shows up in bed. It can be any story. In sex, it's the most intimate you ever are. And you're showing all of your soul and everything you've got. And if you feel like what you have to share is not enough, or it might scare people, if you've got beliefs like that, you're not going to show up as open as you possibly can. And I think that that's how you get the most beautiful, heart-opening, kind of divine version of sex and intimacy, is through being as open as you possibly can. And that only comes from breaking down our own barriers to revealing ourselves, I guess, and loving ourselves enough that we know that we can open to someone else in that way, open our hearts in that way, and still feel comfortable and fully empowered. And I think, especially from the feminine point of view, it's a lot about surrender. So much about surrendering to the moment and being fully present. And so if you've got a story about, your thighs are too big or something like that, you're not going to just let him put your legs wherever you want them, So I think it's a story either way, and recognizing those stories and being willing to look at them with love, and then kind of maybe even sharing those stories with your partner so they understand what your past has kind of brought into that, so that you can heal them together as well.
Yeah, that's really great. Benjamin, who's joined us, has just said there's a vast diversity in that spectrum too, which is so true. Go ahead, Andy. Did you want to add something to that?
Yeah, it's like just tips for the guys that are actually listening or that do watch this and so on. In that is, as Kiara just mentioned, that they don't always know what you want to ask for or how to ask, right? And it's like, instead of being the guy that knows it all and so on and gets in and just does what he wants and can quite often be so different, every single person, like every single woman, is so different. And in regards to like sexuality as well, like what they like, what they don't like, even down to like yeah, like the vagina and clitoris, like different shapes, different sizes, everything, like different areas of sensitivity. Some like it there, some like it not. Like all that stuff, like ask someone about their body. And I can't speak feminine, but I can only be assume that you're going to feel far better when a man actually asks you what you want or what you like and things like that, and shows they actually care and that they acknowledge and recognize you and they want to please you, as opposed to just taking you and like, yeah, there's the fantasy of them just having their way with you and the most amazing sex ever. But the odds of that always happening are quite small. So a man to actually stop and take the time, or in that moment be like, what do you like? You know, what can I do for you? How can I please you? Those kind of things. It gives you that, especially the feminine energy of being totally acknowledged and idolized and like seen, like here I am, and you see all of me and you want me. And in that, then yeah, like feminines are quite auditory as well, like hearing it and hearing what you say to me, and like whatever, you know, as you said, like thighs or whatever it is about things like that. It's like telling them what you see in their body and what's sexy and what's beautiful and what you like, and truly letting that feminine know, like, I am seeing all of me and this guy loves it, like thinks it's beautiful, thinks it's hot, thinks it's sexy, whatever you want to call it. When you can do that for a woman, that's very, very different, as you said, when it comes to the mental and the emotional, on being recognized and how you are in bed with them. Then is not just the physicality and the sex, and yeah, you know, same thing with, like, I've grown up with four sisters, so I'm quite blessed to be around a lot of feminines, and I've got a lot of feminine friends. And the same thing of the stuff I talked about before with guys being like big dick, small dick, whatever. There's no right perfect dick for every woman. You know, it's a case of like, some women, the way their shape is like, I only prefer this kind of size. Too big is just painful. Whereas other women love a massive dick, like all that sort of stuff. And I truly believe that when you have that right soul connection with someone and then everything kind of starts to flow, you'll find that it's almost the perfect fit, the perfect match, so to speak. So yeah, it's just step into your masculine and hold that space and be like, this is my space and I'm holding you in it. And I want to know how I can serve you best, how I can please you.
I love what you said there, Andy, to be in your masculine energy as you say that, not to kind of be second guessing yourself and your ability to please, just knowing you want to please and asking from that space. Otherwise, I've had guys ask me before, well, you know, what do you like? And I'm like, oh, like, can't you just do something? So if they were in their masculine energy and they're like, I want to please you, tell me what you like, that's a very different energy. And in totally. In that as well, I think it's so important for women to explore their own bodies, because as you said, Andy, we are all different, and there's like a whole kind of world going on inside there. And if you don't know how to please you, you cannot answer the question, you know? Like I just think it's so important to explore and be open with yourself and try things that you think may be a little bit scary to try with your partner. Try them by yourself first, and then show him. He would love to watch you do that. Show him what pleases you. And just nothing very passionately.
But that's really good advice. Yeah, you know, in my Facebook group, someone was asking the other day about multiple orgasms and, you know, how can you relax enough to get a multiple orgasm? And my first question was, have you had one on your own? Because every woman's body is different. Some like more pressure the second time, some don't like any pressure, and they need a bit of a moment in between so that they can kind of regroup and then go at it again. So if you don't know that yourself, you can't advise the guy. And you know, don't expect him to know, because, you know, a lot of times women aren't willing to say it to them. You know, I think there's a lot more conversation happening around sex, which is great, which, you know, makes it great to be in the role that I'm in, but it's not always something that people are willing to talk about yet. Now, how would you, when you approach couples that have been together for a while and things have kind of, you know, settled down a little bit and the spark is gone, the communication is really about their to-do list, or, you know, how was their day at work, and there really isn't that connection. Maybe it was never there and it was just really lost at first. How do you get them back to, or even towards that, because maybe they never had it? How do you get them to that soul connection if they've been together a while and they want it but they don't know quite how to go about it?
You literally said it in your language. I take them back to where that spark occurred. I take them back to that polarity, right? What we talked about earlier. There was a polarity. There was a north and south pole. You guys are that perfect match. There's no spark. Nothing happens without that, right? There has to be that match. That's where the attraction occurs. And that's a big thing for people to understand, but most people don't. And so I go, like, what was happening there? Where were you at in your life? What were you feeling? What did you think about her? What did you think about him? How did you feel? All of that. Go, where like, tell me about that. Let's create that image. Let's create that vision, that feeling, what it sounded like, what it looked like, all of it. And go, what's different now? Where are you still doing that? Like, oh, it turns out you were, like, say the man was, you rocked up, you were surprising and doing those sort of things, and now it's just kind of go through the motions and like everything's really routine. And she loved the spontaneity in you. She loved that that just step in and like, I'm going to take you, I'm going to do this. And now it's just like, whatever you want, baby. You just whatever you want. And she's missing that now. Like, when you can go back to where it built from, the foundations, what's the difference on the 27th floor now? Is the tower building like this? Where did it all start from, and rebuild from there? And there's different things, and kids and mortgages and jobs and all the rest of whatever's going on in their life. But you can create that polarity again and find that place here and put new things in place that allow this kind of spark and energy to be in your life today. But if you don't know where it started from, you can't create something.
Yeah, that's really great. And Benjamin's saying on the side here, he said, one of the most common things that gets messed up in relationships is the idea that you owe me X exploration. And then he said, definitely also resentment, lack of communication over time definitely lends to ending up drifting away from that polarity. I think he makes a couple of good points there. And also, I know from a feminine perspective, no, those weren't at all, Benjamin, no worries. The other thing that I find happens a lot with the women that I talk to, and even the men sometimes, the men might be less willing to say it in a group setting probably, but women will hang on to things for a long time. And, like you didn't do the dishes or you haven't helped out. Now, they may not realize, a guy might not realize that doing the dishes is actually foreplay for a lot of women. And then from the other side, women will hang on to that. Well, you didn't do this or you didn't do that. And they may never say that it's an issue, but they will hold out sex because something didn't happen the way they wanted it. And that level of resentment builds up in your energy field. There's no way that you can get through that if you don't kind of acknowledge that you're hanging on to some of that. Do you guys agree?
I totally do. And it kind of links with what I wanted to say about the last question as well, in that resentment is kind of something like you're blaming the other person, and that can be fixed with open communication, and maybe Andy will talk more about that. But I also think resentment comes from not having filled up your own love tanks first. So I feel like, if your partner's like, hey, I'm going to go hang out with the boys tonight, and you're like, what? I never get to go out with the girls, blah, blah, blah. It's like, well, take some responsibility for your own love tanks and fill those up first. And I think when you say to him, I'm going to go out and hang out with the girls, love tanks. Okay, good. I'll explain that. I imagine that inside of us, there are little love tanks. And I like to think of them in terms of the 5 love languages. So do you know who did those, Andy? Do you remember the name?
The 5 love languages?
Gary someone.
I forget his name.
Yeah, you can look it up anyway, 5 love languages, and they are quality time, words of affirmation. Gary Chapman, that's right. Quality time, words of affirmation, physical touch, acts of service, and gifts. Really great to look them up if you haven't already. And so I imagine that we've kind of got these little love tanks inside of us. And, when we spend quality time with ourselves, or if we go and get a massage, or give us, like, buy something that would bring us a lot of pleasure, like however it is that you want to fill up your own love tanks, it is so important to have those filled up. Otherwise, you're kind of asking for it from somebody else, and that's where resentment can be created. If you're not filling up your own love tanks, you're asking for it from somebody else often. And also, once we can fill up our own love tanks, and then they're kind of like overflowing and we've got so much love to give, that's when we feel the sexiest. That's when we've got time to actually invest in our relationships and really open those connections, which means that we then can create that intimacy and that sexiness. Like, we feel sexier if we've had a bath and shaved our legs. And often, I know in the past, I've blamed my partner and been like, he doesn't want to have sex with me. But really, it was that I didn't want to have sex with me at that point because I hadn't done, what I needed to do for it. So I think love tanks in terms of resentment and creating more intimacy if you're feeling like it's kind of lacking at the moment. Understanding that you have that inside of you and you have the ability to fill that up yourself. And when it's the most filled up, you're able to then share it openly with other people is so important.
Yeah, I agree in that context. Like, we so often, things like resentment and all this sort of stuff that builds up quite often are coming back to things that are going on within us internally, and understanding that what you create in your relationships is a perfect mirror of what's going on with you, and you bring that into yourself. And I've been in relationships where I've been cheated on, you know, and early on in my life, I was like, how could they do that to me? Blah, 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 you know, all this kind of stuff. And that's just ego, right? That's just understanding that you think it's about you, when in essence, you literally are two individuals uniting to actually create something. You're not two halves coming together as a whole. And what I find is that people so often get stuck in creating these stories, all these kind of things that, oh, this person did this to me, or this person's better than me, or I deserve this, all this sort of stuff. No, that's an individual. When you love someone, you love them as they are. You want to talk about sex and stuff like that, then you need to be in a place where you can openly do that and be confident in yourself. Like, there's no point going in and saying, I want X, Y, and Z in this kind of in sex or things like that, if you're not able to understand what you truly need, and you're just lashing out, or you're just saying things to people just because you want that. And when you can understand that everything in your relationship is coming from you, everything is a case of, you know, if you're feeling insecure and you're feeling a lot of uncertainty in your relationship, you're going to create that uncertainty too in your actions. So, you know, the 5 love languages that Kara talked about, I think, are so crucial, and understanding what your partner needs and what you need, and being able to communicate that. You know, in the relationship I'm in at the moment, like, kinesthetic, like physical touch for me and words of affirmation are massive. Whereas you know, physical touch isn't a big one for my partner. It's quite the opposite. It's more words of affirmation and quality time, you know, and quality time is big for me too. So it's just being able to negotiate that and communicate, and knowing that what I want to express to someone, I may need to shift that and alter that for them to receive it the way I'm communicating it, or the way I want to give it to them. Whereas if I communicate from my place, then that may not resonate with them. And yeah, if you want to have great sex or great quality time, or all these kind of things, you need to be able to give it to yourself first and understand your 6 core needs and what they are in your relationship.
Yeah, that's beautiful. I love that. You guys are so on point about a lot of this. I had a little bit of action on the side here. I had to get rid of a troller there, but it's good. You guys carry the conversation so well. I appreciate it. What is the ways that people can get in touch with you? We're almost out of time. We can go over if you guys are willing to, but what are the ways that people can find you if they want to work with you?
You can head over to Facebook. We've just up our page today called Relationship Road Trip. Just put it on there. Then obviously there's both of our individual pages on Facebook under Andy Gordon and Chiara O'Leary. You can see our little pictures there. That's pretty much us. So look for that picture. And yeah, I think keep a look. Like, if you get onto that page, we're going to be putting out an offer pretty soon for people that we just want to give a gift. We want to give something that's going to allow people to take those steps themselves. I've got a plane flying over, wants to join in, but that want to start taking those steps to creating extraordinary relationships. And this isn't about relationship and sexual. This can be friendship, business, everything. Like, how to create those extraordinary relationships. We're going to be the stepping stones to start that, just as a gift from us. So that'll be up very, very soon. And then, you know, Chiara and I live on opposite ends of the country almost in Australia. So we're getting together the second weekend in May, and are going to be doing a lot of video content stuff that we're putting out there. So if you jump on the page, you'll see that. And then we'll probably later this year going to do an actual relationship road trip where we travel around the country and get a van and a GoPro, and we travel around the country and just interview a lot of our friends and family and business people and stuff on what their version of extraordinary relationships are, as well as heaps of different strangers and people around the country. And we'll do a lot of shows and stuff live from there too. So there's heaps of stuff coming later this year.
Awesome. And feel free to just add us on Facebook as well, or send us a message. We are always happy to connect, especially if you want to talk about relationships. You kind of can't stop talking about it.
You guys have yeah. Thank you.
I was saying I've just chucked
the link.
My Facebook link, both our Facebook links into the chat there, as well as the group. I think you did that too.
Yeah.
Laura. So yeah, that's
awesome.
profiles.
And I'll be sure to include these in my link in the Facebook group. Oh, good. Benjamin's following you guys. You guys have such a great...
Awesome. Thanks, Benjamin.
You guys have such a great dynamic together. I can so see how couples would really feel at ease, and you're both comfortable talking about both sides. And Andy, you're cautious not to overstep on the feminine side, but you offer a really great perspective, and the same for you, Kiara. I think it's so great that you guys found each other and that you're able to make that soul connection for business. I think it makes a huge difference in being able to create that trust. And do you find also has where you are in your own relationship, or your views about relationship, whether you're in one or not? I know you are, Andy. I'm not sure if I knew for you, Kiara, but do you find that your views and how good your relationship is going affects other parts of your life?
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. So I kind of, that's how I stumbled into being so passionate about relationships, because I feel like if your relationship is going well, you feel so great and everything else seems to go well. And then if your relationship is having issues, or your relationship with yourself even doesn't feel very loved up and empowering at the time, then everything else in your life will be affected by that. So building your relationship with yourself first, and then your relationship with your intimate partner, can really have a flow on and ripple effects throughout your entire life.
Yeah, I love that. That's great. How about you, Andy?
Yeah. It makes such a massive difference. And it's not, for me, it's not just like things can happen in your life that come out in your relationship. And I talked about the 6 core needs before. I didn't really go into it, but things like love and connection, significance, growth, certainty, uncertainty, and contribution. And these are needs that we have in our life in all contexts. But if you start to starve yourself of something, or don't fill up your own cup, so to speak, and overflow and do those things, then you're going to see it come out in other areas. And if you have a lot of uncertainty in your business, you're not sure where the next paycheck's coming in, or whatever it is, that uncertainty can roll out into your relationships, right? Because we create the external of what's the internal. And vice versa, if you're not sure what's happening between you and your partner and things like that, it can flow on to work and to business and to things, because you're not putting through that certainty. Or if there's no love and connection, maybe your business clients and stuff aren't feeling love and connection. Like, it all flows. It's all connecting. We are part of one massive universal energy. We are energy. And there's ebbs and flows, there's ups and downs, there's all of it. And it's being able to be aware, be in touch to what's needed within you. And if you can give yourself that, you come from a place where you are able to truly give yourself and be part of something greater than you. But you can't do that until you get it right within you and you know where you come from. And then you can start to be in check with, how am I today? What do I need? Where do I need to give some attention? Because it's a little empty. I'll do it there and give balance again in your life. Yeah,
that's really great. You guys are so fantastic. And I've kept you already for an hour. Can you believe this has been an hour? It goes by so fast. So, like I said, I'll be sharing this on, well, you know what, Benjamin, I will be sharing it. You'll get a replay here. I will also be sharing my YouTube page and my Facebook group, Mind Sex Mastery. And I will be doing a podcast eventually. I'd love to have you guys back, because I think there's so much we didn't cover that we could cover. I love the topic of relationships and the way we cover the energies and whatnot. So you guys are not to be missed. I'll make sure that all of my followers, including my mailing list, have the links to your pages and this blab. So thank you both for being here. Is there any last words of advice you'd like to tell people before we sign off?
Oh, too many. I think just it is so important to know and love you first, rather than seeking what you're looking for in someone else. And then when you do that, you come to get the relationship as a whole person, or you come to the intimacy as a whole person. and then they get to come as a whole person, and you get to bounce off each other and have this brilliant dynamic together, rather than filling voids in each other, which always leads to unhealthy stuff. So know you and love you, and then bring all of that to a relationship and play full out. Open your heart.
That's
Yeah,
right.
I've got. Oh, let's go outside now. I got 2 bits of advice. I'm just going to step inside because it gets a bit loud. I've got 2 bits of advice. One is, when you and your partner, if you're feeling what we talked about, that you're not getting something, or you want, like, say, maybe it's you want more affection and things like that, and you're not getting affection, I challenge you to, instead of just going to the partner and being like, you're not giving me this, or so on, to ask yourself, what can I do to give myself this?
Mm-hmm.
So do that first. Ask yourself that, and instead of reacting versus responding in conversations, ask yourself, how do I want to respond as opposed to react? And then the other one is the flow on from that, which is, when you know what you can do to give yourself that, then go and talk to your partner and say, hey, honey, look, I'm feeling a lack of, affection between us at the moment. But I also realize I'm not doing much to give myself affection. So what I'm going to do in the next sort of few weeks is I'm really going to put some time in the diary for me to get in touch with me, maybe go for a walk, bit of meditation, really give myself some nourishment and love and affection. And I'd really be supporting that. And in fact, ways that you could show me affection that I'd love to receive from you are this. Are you happy to do that? Or would you like to help me with that? That's totally different than you did this and you're not doing this and so on. So when you can first find out what you can do to give yourself that, and then communicate you're going to do that and you would love support and for that person to meet you there, it's a whole different conversation, and your quality of relationships and your communication will just explode.
Yeah, that's great advice. Both of you. Fantastic. Well, thank you so much for being on Mind Sex Mastery. Benjamin, I know, thank you for being a sidebar guest here. We love having you and the questions and the answers you guys had.
Thanks, Ben.
Yeah, for sure. And, we'll be following your work, no doubt. I love your energy, both of you. It's so great to see you guys working on this together. And good luck with Relationship Road Trip. It's a great name.
Yeah, it's going to be good fun.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Thanks
for your time.
Yeah, you're welcome. You're most
Thanks
welcome.
for having us, Delora.
For sure. We'll talk again soon, no doubt.
Awesome.
All right. See ya.
Yeah. Bye-bye.